kind of thought that was, where did he go?
Oh boy, double trouble here. There we go. Right. And let's just make sure everybody can share. Recording. Okay, cool. Great. Nice. Here we go. Okay, so we're back. And let's see. No? Wait. Okay, a little here. Oh, okay. So H2, we saw, okay, so I think that there's an initial physiological cost of social engagement. We're going to talk a little bit more about that in a second, but yeah, just that it stresses people out to talk to strangers, even if it's in a way that is supposed to be socially connective and to like help you feel closer to each other. And it did help them feel closer to each other after, but it was still stressful. So, in a nuanced way, which I'll show you. Um, okay, so here's some of the change scores from pre-post. So these are the three different indices of HRV, really the human, and in both RMSSD and SDNN were the most salient and significant versus the chatbot was not significant in any of these. And then the control was in this one though at that point. So um it's yeah, let me show you this other one. It's easier to oh wait. Oh yeah. Yeah. So this okay, this is the trajectory analysis that was more this included the um actual reactive HRV data. So before we just had pre and post, right? HRV 5 minute time periods. But then these four in between are now the 20 minutes binned into 5 minute chunks each. Okay, so you'll see, and I have this in three different ways of looking at it. So there's the HF, so high frequency, RMSSD, and SDNN. But let's just go back to HF, and then we'll go back to SDNN. So this surprised me. Chatbot is purple. Okay. Hopefully nobody's colorblind here. Sorry if you are, but this this decreased from here to there. But if we wouldn't have had this in between data, we would have thought that like none of this would have showed up, right? Which is crazy. The human, they just were stressed. So I mean, you can see it kind of comes up a little bit, but then goes down, up a little, down, down, right? I mean, that kind of comes up, but overall, from before to after, goes down across all three. Control, it looks like it goes up if you just look at the before and after. But when we add this, it's like, whoa, yeah, it goes down and then comes back up. So when they're reading the vocalization, there's actually some good data on that. The vocalization during vocalization. So my HRV right now is probably like down for talking all this out, but then afterwards, usually it'll come up just because it's vagal, response. But then let me show you. So this It's pretty similar for RMSSD.
So quick question on that,
Yes.
because the examples you gave us, um, if you're talking about your relationship with your mother, that could be a very stressful kind of conversation.
Yes.
Um, so did everyone get the same question for each one of those bins? And so do we know like, oh, that's the mother conversation, that's the dinner conversation, and that's
No, it's a little bit, it's kind of messy in that sense. They got to pick out of 36 questions. So they would pick from page one, which had a third, page two had a third, page three had a third. They were divided into like the first page was kind of more, entry level, I guess you could say. Second page is a little deeper. Third page was like the what's your relationship with your mother? And I remember one, I don't know if it was you, Emily, or who, but they asked the question about death and they like just started weeping. And and afterwards she like told me about it and I was like, oh, let's look at the data, like I want to see what that looks like on the heart data. Um, and it went way down and then came back up. But um it was just interesting. But yeah, it was random. So it's kind of hard to say that's the mother question or, whatever. What I think we can look at is the difference between chatbot and controller chatbot and human was so pronounced from baseline to during and then after, which was just interesting to me.
I was just curious if there was variation
That
in
was the
valence of the kinds of questions that
questions.
they talked about.
Yeah, no,
And they picked their own question. Like for some reason, I thought it was generated. So they didn't have a choice. It was just generated and this is the question you talk about. But
right.
they got to pick their question.
Yeah. Yeah, so in both the human and the chatbot
Yeah.
condition, they would say like they would start, and there was a little bit of variation on this, right, Emily? Um, but it was we framed it as a question game. Where they would get to ask and answer questions with either, well, we didn't say that with either, one or the other. We just said with this person who's here, um, or with this chatbot, have you ever used a chatbot? Oh, great. Here's how to do it, um, so yeah, it was slightly,
Okay, so now I'm
Yeah,
slightly
so,
confused as well because if it's reciprocal, then was that question
programmed into the
and
chatbot.
so did the chatbot answer the same question that they answered? And so was only the participant choosing the question, or was the chatbot also choosing questions?
Both. So they would ask and answer the same question.
But the chatbot could choose ones that they did not choose.
Yes. So that they could, yes, yeah, it was kind of more natural in
Okay.
terms of conversation. It wasn't like, hey, you got to do this and then this and then this. It was like, hey, follow these questions, choose one from page one first, page two, and page three. If you have more time, go back to page
yeah,
one.
I'm just thinking if they could choose the questions, then I could choose the ones that are less reactive to me.
Yes,
Like,
right.
you
Which,
want to ask me about my relationship with your mom, that's going to be more,
right.
right? I'm
Yeah.
going to get a little more stressed
Totally.
than some of the other questions.
Yeah.
So if they got to pick their own questions,
they're
they
in
might
there.
have, yeah,
So.
I read them.
Yeah.
Yeah, so maybe, I don't know,
Yeah.
that could have something to do with their choices of questions they
For
ask.
sure. Well, and also
They
like
chose.
wondering if at first they're asking like the easy like
Mhm.
the safe questions. And I got to be a Confederate, which I loved. It was like it was such a cool experience. Because like you do feel close to the people at the end. I did at least. I like wanted to be friends with some of them. I didn't.
Well, that would be-
that would have been a violation of the IRB.
Yeah, that would be the other question is, so for the Confederate, it's really hard to create relationships,
Yeah.
especially in that short of a period of time,
Yeah,
to really create the kind of relationship that I want to share with you how I feel about my mom.
totally.
We keep going back to the mom question.
I know that's the one that I remember to.
Well,
Yeah.
The triggery kind of thing.
well, I mean,
Yes.
but I think the hard part is that it could have a different level of valence than some of the other questions.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, I agree. Um,
And it not even, and it also, I'm just thinking, it's also just far more personal, even if it's very positive, it's far more personal than like who you want to have
Yeah.
dinner with.
yeah. Or even like one of them was, you've gotten everybody out of your house, it's on fire, you have enough time to go grab one thing, what would you get, safely? What would you get? And it's like, huh. But it's not who you want to talk to and what would you say if you knew that they were going to die tomorrow? That's a big question.
Mhm.
So, yeah. But I mean, when I did them, and it was probably pretty random. And so we did not control for this in that sense. But sometimes people ask the crazy ones to me, and I was like, all right, let's go there, Okay. Um, so yeah. But yeah, so let me just show you one more that I think was really,
Can I ask just one more question? Was there a time period like the ChatGPT would only talk for 2 minutes? Was there a time limit on that or
yeah, sometimes it
was
would
there a
wax
conversation
long,
that just kept, yeah,
but I told it to not wax
Oh,
long.
okay, that's
And
what I wondered.
most of the time, what it was not good at is getting tangential. So, it would say, "How's your relationship with your mother?" And we have that conversation, and then it'd be like, "Well, tell me more,"
Mm.
And then it would say, "Well, that's so interesting you said that about the fact that you guys went to California together recently, and how was your time at the beach?" Instead of going to the next question, it would just kind of get distracted. Um, so that was interesting, but also like maybe less, maybe that's why it was a little bit more like relaxing. I don't know.
Yeah.
Than the human, right? Down here.
Is it follow instructions?
Yeah, exactly. So, um, but this I think is interesting contrast here. If we were only to have done the before and after, this is what it would look like, right? Ooh, like control. It's like what it definitely increases, which by the way, so just a reminder, an increase means relaxation, a decrease means stress. And then the human, right? It's like boom, or sorry, chatbot, and then the red is the human. So then over here, it's like this is a very different story, right? And even this is a very different story. So I mean, it definitely decreases more over time, but I'm glad we did it. It was a lot of time and effort to do that, but I thought it was worth looking at the full, you know, dynamic instead of just the
So
effect.
would an alternative explanation be that rather than it being stress, that it's a measure of engagement?
I've thought about that too. Yeah, of like it's sympathetically activating. So it is a sympathetic activation, right? But is that just because, like in the neurovisceral model, it talks about how just cognitive engagement can, stress us out. I mean, that's a lot of the stress studies, or try to do math, like count backwards from 397 and quantities of five or whatever, and then have people evaluate you. So I think this is my theory, is that it's the evaluative like perception of thinking, what are they going to think about me if I tell the truth of what they just asked me, or what should I really say, and they're thinking about that and like, "Ugh, I don't really know you, kind of a thing, but that's what I
And so you said that
Rangers.
the chat box bot is Millie, always a female voice,
Always female.
no matter which.
Yeah, it started as a kind of what
Same with your Confederate, sex matched or always.
Confederates. I'll talk about that in the limitations. There were 13 of us. So
Okay.
yeah, it was kind of all over the place. Mostly female. Yeah. So uh is this still okay? Yeah, it is. Okay, great. Um I was gonna answer something else you said, but I forgot. Maybe I'll come back to it in the limitations. That's right. Okay. So yeah, the dynamics, that was interesting. Very different than just pre and post, but let's keep going. So this is H3 and H4, the psychological side. So we saw the,
Sorry, do you mind going back?
yeah, for sure. Yeah.
Okay, just a note for myself and others. Here, human is red. On the next one, human is blue.
I know, yeah. Yeah, we'll change that for the publication.
It's just, I was like
Yes.
looking at the red line
No,
and
thank
on
you.
the next one, that
Yeah, like
changes.
for the loneliness, yes, the colors changed a little bit, I know, yes, I used R to create all my code, and then, yeah, anyways, and all these graphs, so, I'll tweak the code. I know that did switch, I know, it should have been purple, I can change it. Okay, so loneliness. We had the 3-item adaptation from the trait loneliness, and then 1-item state loneliness, which was more of a how lonely are you feeling right now kind of a question versus like 3 questions that are sort of getting at it in the moment. This one was much more sensitive to the acute state. So, and then social connection. So these were all asked before and after. And you can see there is a change, right? Loneliness does go down. And even in the control group, I thought that was interesting. It slightly goes down. And I talked to Charlotte Roddick about this. She's like, you're gonna see loneliness drop or like go down just by them coming in, being around people, right? In the control group.
Which is weird though that it didn't in the state, but it did in the 3-item one.
Yeah, right. No, it's interesting. So yeah, so here's the interventions versus the control in terms of the psychological outcomes, same outcomes. So human was significant on all 3, and the chatbot was just on the state loneliness. And as Scott pointed out in the manuscript, and you saw too, like they're really small effects, just teensy, like in terms of the model, like overall impact, right? But I still think it's interesting to report it. So, together with the physiological impacts were much more, I guess you could say.
Where's the control condition in there?
I don't think I had it on there. I just wanted to compare it to the control. So these are the intervention
So they're not different from each other, they're different from the.
from the control.
Okay, because I was confused how these error bars are overlapping and yet it was significant. Okay,
Yeah.
that makes more sense now.
Mhm. Right. Okay, and then we created a short scale about attitudes of AI and wanted to see if people's attitudes around AI impacted their, the model or the like intervention effect with or without the covariate of AI attitudes. And on this, it didn't really have a big impact. So that was interesting. It did on another scale in a that I'll show you in a second. But and it had like a Chromebox alpha of like 0.71. So it was like an okay scale. Not amazing, but and then sorry, this is kind of in the way here. Let's see. Well, that might be as good as it gets. Okay. Huh. All right. So this was after the at the end. This was not a before after, but this was at the end. How close did you feel to this person that you had a conversation with? You get to drag that little circle, like not close to like really close, right? Inclusion of others in the self scale, and then the relational synchrony is 3 questions that asks about how in sync like do you feel with this person or the chatbot. So they felt 40 this is out of 100. So 41 out of 100 average, which I was actually surprised that they still felt somewhat in sync with the chatbot, but there's a huge difference here, just really big between human and chatbot, which I think is great. Good for the humans. One more for the humans. Right? Yeah, exactly. That's just a table that kind of shows all those. But and then this is the one where same two things, inclusion of others in self and relational synchronity, but specifically with the chatbot participants only. Did the attitude about AI impact feelings of closeness with AI? And it did. So people, if they thought AI is like creepy or like unethical or whatever, right? Like these questions that we asked them, then they obviously didn't feel in sync with the AI. So as much. So that was kind of interesting. And then this was H5. So was there a moderation effect with loneliness? Like, did chronic loneliness moderate this, like the how they react to the HRV, right? Their reactive HRV, or their recovery. And so higher romantic loneliness within, so the UCLA scale did not. The Salsa did, and we looked at which domain within the Salsa, and it was the romantic domain that was really what like stood out. And so that's where, and this is kind of confusing. I don't like simple slopes, because when we're looking at other trajectory stuff, this is not a timeline. This is just low, average, and high loneliness levels. And so looking at the slope, um, did it, so it's kind of showing a blunting effect. So people with high loneliness romantically, physiologically didn't react to this as much as the people who had low loneliness. So that was interesting. Potentially like a physiological thick skin, or something that they developed. We'll talk about that in a second, but in terms of implications. But yeah, so here's where it shows, that romantic was the salient between the friendship, family, and romantic loneliness domains. So that moderated that impact. So here we are. What are the key discoveries? Just to kind of recap here. No loneliness, resting HRV link. Physiological cost of social engagement was documented, which is kind of interesting to me. I was thinking that it would relax everybody to like feel closer to them, and it stressed them out. At least the humans, right, with other humans. And then the chronic loneliness blunted acute response to that. So I thought that was interesting, high loneliness, which was actually similar to what they found. So they did two things too. They did both reactive and resting. So so they won't hate us totally when we reviewed their other one. And then, yeah, just new evidence that conversational social connection to humans is superior to connection with chatbots. You can take that to your meeting, Julianne, and just that you have. We got evidence. And then, yeah, psychological, physiological dissociation, which is interesting. So both interventions reduce loneliness, even though it was really small effect. Both of the interventions increase sympathetic tone significantly. So stress people out. And then, maybe feeling emotionally better doesn't equal physiological benefit on the short term, right? So it's okay if it's stressful to go to a party and not know people and try to get to know people, but maybe it's worth it, right? Psychologically over time, even though it's probably stressful. Which makes me a lot, Julianne, think of the research we did with Eventbrite and how, going to an event, right, with somebody in person, actively engaging, like to me, that is a little bit more high energy, right? Or maybe activating of the sympathetic nervous system than staying at home watching Netflix and or even chatting with a chatbot at home, right? So, anyways, kind of, I was like, huh, maybe that's connected. I threw that in there at the end. Um, so tying this back to the theory, social baseline theory, cognitive physiological benefit is based on familiar others, not unfamiliar others. So that was something that I kind of thought about, and I was like, well, it's not strangers that the SPT talks about, right? It's familiar others is that like makes that, less stressful and less cognitively, um, difficult and energetic. So, and then this kind of concept that I came up with when Emily and I were talking about this a couple of, I don't know when it was, a month ago or something like that, when we were talking about all the data. And this concept of activation energy and chemistry, right? It's like it takes so much like this activation energy to get to the chemical reaction. But once you hit that, phoom, like that's when the reaction happens and it's like less effort, right? So it's kind of a bit of, something that needs to be tested and needs to be looked at more. I'm super interested to look at it more with a lot of other questions, but there's this initial physiological investment that could lead to psychological benefits later, right? So this kind of activation energy, but in a social sense. So, and yeah, romantic loneliness as a physiological numbing agent. I don't know. There's questions I have about it that I'll talk about in just a second with future research. But yeah, it could help to explain the loneliness health pathway if that is actually the direction of it. I don't know. We'll see. And then the AI
Can I ask a question
companions.
about that one, Andy?
Yes, Scott.
Um, I just am curious because since romantic loneliness kind of uniquely moderated the acute HRV kind of reactivity, I'm curious if you think this tells us something about the structure of loneliness as a construct. Like, is it useful to think of loneliness as one thing? Do you think that global loneliness is distinct from romantic loneliness? I wonder if you could just talk about that a little bit.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that's a really important question because the scales, when you look at the questions that we ask them, I think there's like six each in each domain of the SALSA scale. And then the UCLA scale that I used in this is the three item. It's widely used. Um, but yeah, I think it is different. I think a lot of them are getting at um, belonging, like the general global loneliness kind of concepts, like belonging, feeling known and and feeling supported, like you have someone. I mean, I'd have to pull up the questions or the three item, but I think those are some of the concepts. And the romantic is kind of like that, um, but it's, do you have a romantic partner that you feel satisfied with? So it's almost like relationship satisfaction mixed with the loneliness as well.
I have three
It's a
items if you
different.
want me.
Oh, UK, yeah.
How
Thank you.
often do you feel you lack companionship?
So lack of companionship. This is the
How often do you feel left out?
left out. Yep. So
How often do you feel isolated from others?
feel isolated from others. Yeah. 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 Versus the salsa is, and I could pull that up too. Oh man. Um, but yeah. Um, I
I
don't know
guess
if
part
that's
of part of my question is just, do you think there's something that's unique here? Because there's certainly a lot of research, people like Julianne and Wendy, Janice Kiko Glazer, people have done a lot when it comes to romantic relationships and this sort of thing. So I
yeah.
wonder if you feel like that's something that needs further investigation because it's unique, or do you feel like, I don't know, there's just a lot of things going on here and maybe this one worked kind of randomly, or just what your take is on that. As is romantic loneliness unique?
it wasn't a prediction. Like romantic loneliness wasn't, I did not predict that. It was just kind of a, which one is more salient because I was curious. But it wasn't like it was a pre-registered prediction. Um, so yeah, I think it's unique. I think it could be. I do think it could be. Yeah. I think it could be worth, and let me get to that in some of the future research too, because I think there's some, yeah, I think there's collecting some data about around that could be helpful. Um,
Okay, that's great.
that's a good question.
I just can't see if you can see me, but I'm nodding. So
Oh,
yes,
okay.
please continue.
Yes.
So I want to have a follow-up, but I don't know whether to just let you do your future directions first and then let's just put a pin in it
Okay, yes.
and remind me to come back to the
Do put a pin.
romantic one.
Okay, yes. Um, yeah, so and then AI companions, I don't know if I got to this, limited physiological engagement. So maybe that's why that was less stressful. There wasn't like the face to face, the like risks, whatever. So no deep relational work, I guess you could call that. Initial parasympathetic response may suggest safety or novelty even of, hey, this is new. This is cool. I didn't know you could chat with somebody, a chatbot with my voice. So it could serve as a stepping stone, but maybe not a substitute for sure. And then just with the polyvagal neurovisceral theory nuance, social engagement can recruit sympathetic system as well. So that's just something that we observed. And that context is important, familiarity as well. So a couple of quick limitations. So in the design, obviously these are just like, what a lot of times you put in for just limitations, but yeah, single session, cross-sectional, unfamiliar others, so it wasn't as natural in a lab setting. From the measurement side, HRV is an indirect measure of autonomic balance. It's not, it's not everything. Physiology is super complex. But it's interesting to see that aspect. It is a window. And then multiple factors influence HRV, right? We controlled for a lot of factors. We did, actually. We screened tons of people out. I think it was like 800 and something people who took the survey, and only 339 of them actually went through. So, but we didn't screen for everything. So many things can impact HRV. Even if they got a text right before they got to there that said, hey, something like jarring, right? That could have impacted their whole session, right? So there's so many things. We didn't control for sickness. We did have a couple of coughers. Like, I don't think you should be here, buddy. But anyways, so yeah. And then
Thinking like that probably is probably more impactful than some of the things you excluded for.
no, for sure. Yeah, we actually did exclude. I don't know if it was you or Emma or somebody that. Yeah, this guy was coughing like crazy, and I was like, "All right, I'm not taking him out. I'm sorry." Um, but yeah, and then just one LLM. We just use ChatGPT. I mean, is that a confound or is that a limitation? I don't know. There's so many of them out there. And then, like I said, there were 13 different research assistants. That's a lot of different people, right? You can't really control for one specific personality even. And I thought about this, but I didn't do like a personality assessment on every single one of the RAs, which would have been interesting.
But you had like a protocol that they had to follow, kind of, other than,
Everybody followed the same.
but they
same
chose the
instructions.
questions too.
They did.
Did they follow did they ask the same questions?
The humans would ask an answer and
Right.
they would pick and then
So
they would pick.
did your Confederate always ask the same question?
No.
Or did the Confederate choose questions as well?
They chose as well. Yeah, just like a game.
Yeah.
So it was less systematic in that sense.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, couple of quick, so we all of a sudden have 4 minutes and 20 seconds left on the recording. So methodologically, I was proud of this. I was happy about this. This happened like 3 days ago. I uploaded all the data to OSF on the R code and the code book and everything. And this wonderful PhD student at University of Albany, who just happens to have lots of time on her hands, I guess, decided to fully replicate the whole thing and did it with near perfect agreement with my original results. So I was happy about that. And you can see it right there if you want to go check out the comparison. It's a spreadsheet, Google Sheet. It's editable, so be careful. Um, so I was happy about that. Tall, if you're online still, please think. And I did invite Sojung as well. But yeah, so thank you so much for doing that. I really appreciate your time um, and effort. Trajectory analysis value, I thought was really interesting to add that kind of dynamic. The domain specific assessment, I thought was interesting. Romantic loneliness maybe doesn't equal generalized loneliness like we were just talking about. We tested a new scale, that we validated with this. I don't know if we truly validated it, but in this sample, it had a 0.71 Chromebox alpha, which is acceptable. I thought that was pretty cool. And then just, kind of AI comparison framework. So this study, as far as I could find on the internet and all the databases, is the first one of its kind, the first controlled chatbot versus human HRV study. There's a lot of chatbot versus human studies that are coming out now. Scott published one just recently that's really cool that I cited in here too. So, anyways, I think it contributes to the evolving AI intervention research in cool ways. Future directions. In the next 2 minutes, length of interaction. I think it would be interesting to look at how long after the interaction with strangers does it take for HRV to recover, if it really is stressful. Would a longer conversation change the HRV trend? Like if you really got into it. The original Fast Friends protocol study in 1997 that we took this from was an hour long. So an hour's a long time to get free labor from lots of RAs. So anyways, thank you. Repeated interactions, do physiological costs decrease with familiarity? Like would that change things? I think it would. Partner effects like stranger versus friend versus romantic. That would be interesting to look at. Longitudinal intervention designs, I think would be really cool. So like Jeff Hall at University of Kansas, like he had this study on 200 hours to best friendship, right? So like how would HRV change, from stranger to friend, right? Like over time, that'd be super interesting to look at. Mechanism testing, does romantic loneliness predict autonomic desensitization over time? Or does blunted reactivity, like physiological reactivity, predispose individuals to romantic loneliness? Like, what's the direction? Do you know what I mean? Is it that are people less likely to be in romantic relationships because they're just autonomically blunted, like genetically or something? I don't know. That's a question that I have. And are there, what other mediators are there? There's less than a minute, so yeah, I think can relational synchrony with AI be trained or enhanced through multimodal feedback? Like as AI gets even more anthropomorphized and somewhat creepy, like facial animations, gesture mirroring, enhanced prosody, like turn taking, a lot of those are already coming into place, right? And so let's see if I can move this. But yeah, is there an irreducible gap